G'day cobbers, welcome back to the boot. Actually, that's garage today. Rain and hail outside, so we're inside. Now today we're going to replace a timing belt and water pump on a 1HZ. Same as the 1HDT, very similar to the 1HDT FTE. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay. Alright, first up we need to make a bit of room. So we're going to remove the aircon drive belt and get the aircon pump out of the way. So we need to back off the tensioner. Once that's done, we're going to take the tension off the top. Now, just simply a matter of removing the belt, and we'll work it around the blades to actually get it out. Okay, so we just removed the 4 bolts, only takes a couple of minutes, and now we can just push him out the road a bit. It gives us a bit more room to work on the various bits and pieces. Alright, so we're going to pull the aircon pulley tensioner out the road too, just to give us a bit more room. No, just 2 bolts, and it'll take us a couple of minutes. Now that's out the road, we can actually pull the fan off. We have to pull the fan and the shroud off as one unit. We'll do that now. Alright, next up we've got these 4 bolts to undo. Now if it's spinning, even though I've got the tension on the fan belts, if it's still spinning, jam a screwdriver in there on the other side. And that'll help you take it off. And we'll just undo all 4 of those, and we'll pull out the fan. Now it's number 4 off. Give it a bit of a shake usually, and just drop it into the shroud. Now we'll pull the shroud out. Okay, next up we'll take off top radiator hose to get this shroud out. That's in the road. This is already cooled off, of course. We wouldn't be doing this when it's hot. Give that a bit of a twist. Of course we're doing this outside, so we let the water drain a little bit. We'll pin that back there, just keep them out the road. Okay, now we should be able to pull the fan and radiator shroud out as a unit. Okay, unfortunately we've had to remove the battery box because it was interfering with the shroud, but now the shroud's clear, should be able to pull them both up as a unit. And of course you have to watch the fins of the radiator. That's out the road. We've got a clear spot to get all the rest of it. Alright, and finally the power steering fluid reservoir, we'll just move that out the road too. So we've got unhindered access, and that's just 3 bolts. And 2 from this side here. Okay, so let's move that out the road. And now we've got unhindered access to our timing belt. Okay, so now to remove the timing cover, 3 bolts down the side here. Okay, now we've got a few clips around the edge which we'll just flick off with a screwdriver. These are very hard to come by, so make sure you don't lose them. And that exposes our timing belt. Alright, next thing we need to do is we need to align to the bottom dead center. So these are interference engines, so if we try and turn it over without this connected at the correct sync to the bottom, what will happen is the valves will run into the pistons. We don't want that, so we need to align it up. And what we need to do is line up the mark here with a mark at the top, and down here there's a small nick in the back of the pulley here to align with the pulley there. So keep turning it around until we're on that mark. It's working well for me. Okay, so we're lined up with the pulley there on that mark, and if we look down here, this alignment here is pretty much in line with that mark there as well. So now we know it's in the correct position, and we don't want to move it from there at all. Otherwise it's going to cause us all sorts of drama when we try and turn it and start it up. Okay, so the tensioner pulley here is providing the tension onto this belt here, and the way that tension works is through this spring here. Now, this is the setup for the 1HZ and the 1HDT. The 1HDT FTE, so the turbocharged electronically aided mechanical injection motor, uses a different arrangement, but very similar. So all it does is provides tension onto this pulley and tension onto the belt. So you need to get this spring off, and it can be a bit of a bear. Right, if you don't have an impact gun, what the factory service manual recommends to do is to remove the tapper cover and of course the crossover pipe, and you can put a shifter here which stops it from turning. But if you have an impact gun, you can pop them on the end and reef it out. Just need to start him turning. That's it. And we'll get our impact gun out of there. And we'll do it with the spanner now. Okay, so I couldn't find a spanner of the appropriate size, so I got my ratchet. And because we loosened it with the impact, and we got a screwdriver jammed in the side there to try and help it from stopping the turn. We need to get this off, because once the top pulley's off, we can get the backing plate off so we can replace all the seals and get to our water pump. Now from memory there's only about 70 Newton meters or so on this bolt, so it's not that tight anyway. Rightio, next up we've got to disassemble this assembly. Alright, so we pulled the belt off, and sometimes you'll have to get a bit of a lever behind it and push the top pulley off. Now there's a key that's just dropped on the ground, and we'll grab that out in a second. Okay, so now we'll pull out the tensioner assembly. Pull out the pulley for starters. And there's a spring on that one, so be careful. And now we've got an Allen key head here, so we'll get onto that. Okay, so this is an 8mm Allen wrench. We'll just put a 1/2 inch drive on it there. I'll pull out the rest of our assembly. Now we've got the tensioner out, we can pull out the backing plate here, and that's a big heap of 12mm nuts. Okay, so there's three I think, 12mm. One down the bottom here. Okay. Now if I've got all of them, we should be able to gently lever this forward. And now here's number 4 that I missed.
And number 5.
Right now, there could be some gunk in there, so you might have to give it a bit of a tweak. Oh yeah, and now we've pulled him clear, and we'll have to replace this seal up here, which we'll do soon. Right, next thing we need to do is remove the water pump, because while we're down here, be mad not to. There we go, just a bit of elastic holding it to the bottom, and that's a plastic impeller, so it's always a good idea to change them when you're changing out the timing belt.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, so we've got to remove this seal here and replace it. Now we've got a seal removal tool, so it's going to make things nice and easy. And just grab under the edge, whip it out, simple as that. Now to put the new one in, make sure it goes in the same orientation. And we're going to use a seal driver to get it in nice and flat. And double check it as you're whacking it in, to make sure it's nice and flat. And as you can see there, it's nice and flat with the surface, so that's right to go in. Before we put it in though, we'll pop a bit of grease in behind it because it's not pre-greased, just to support it as it goes over the top of the camshaft drive spigot. Okay, so first one we're putting on is another fresh gasket for the water pump. And we'll put a little bit of silicone on there as well. And we've cleaned off all the surfaces using a bit of Kero and then a bit of methylated spirits to get it nice and clean. Next one's the water pump. We've also put a little bit of blue on that one. Okay, now we just need all the bolts and nuts. Okay, so we've started all these nuts and bolts by hand, and now we'll just quickly nick them up with the impact. And we're going to have to get to the bottom ones with a ratchet. Okay, they're all done now. So we still need the 2 larger ones here for the alternator tensioner. We'll do that now. Up the alternator tensioning bracket, and we'll just run that down. Okay, but we won't lock up the tensioning device here because we have to provide the correct tension onto the alternator belts when they're installed. Okay, next up we need to put the plate here. Okay, so we're putting a line of silicone in here just to keep the dust and whatnot out. So I'll put a line of silicone in here just to keep the dust and stuff out. And also pack the back of the oil seal here. Just with a bit of grease to keep supported when I push it over the drive of the spigot of the camshaft there. And a little bit of blue in there as well. So we'll install that now. That fits on nice and easily, and we'll settle it with a couple of screws. Always make sure you start your screws by hand. Don't start them with the impact, otherwise you might cross thread them. Okay, and now that's seated, we can nip them up with the impact. Not a lot, and we finish it off by hand. There we go, and now we can install the tensioner. Okay, so now we've got the new tensioner, and we'll install that. And again, it's imperative to start them both by hand. before you run them in. And then we've got the 8mm there. And unfortunately the impact won't fit, so we'll do them up by hand. Beautiful. Okay, now for our top pulley. Okay, next we need to put the key in there. Make sure the keyway's nice and clean. And then we can put the pulley in there. Make sure it's indexed towards the top. There we go. Now, again, if you're using the factory service manual, you need to remove the tapper cover and the crossover pipe behind it, and then hold on to the camshaft using a shifter, but we're not going to do that because we've got an impact. This is only 70 foot-pound, which my impact can easily handle. You just got to make sure it doesn't allow the camshaft to spin. We'll get our screwdriver from before. So we can tension it up. And we'll put the impact onto it. And again, it's only 70 foot-pound, so you're not trying to break it. And that'll be plenty. And the final thing you've done, if it has moved around on you, what you need to do is spin it backwards a little and then come forward, just to take up any slack in the system. And again, line up your tooth here with your bottom dead center mark. And now we can put the belt back on, the new belt. Right, now check my alignment. Alignment looks good. Are you still recording? Okay, the springs can be a bit of a pain, but Matty's going to give it a go here. He's assured me you can get it on in less than 10 seconds. So we'll check that out now. Come on. Before I put the cover on though, what I need to do is I need to turn the engine over one full revolution till the marks line up here and here again. Now you have to to get the camshaft to turn over one complete revolution. Of course you're going to have to turn the engine over 2 revolutions because this is a 4-stroke and the camshaft turns at half the speed of the engine. So let's do that now. Okay, so we turned it over 2 full revolutions. The reason we do that is to make sure we've got the timing right. You'd much rather do that very slowly and with a wrench so that you work out that the pistons aren't contacting the valves. So there's very tight clearances in there, other than trying it with the starter motor, and that'll wreck everything. So everything's good, motor turns over, we can put the cover back on now, confident the first time we hit the starter that our pistons won't be contacting our valves. Righto, so now we've popped the cover on and we've popped the 3 bolts in there, and we just need to put the clips on top, so I'll do that now. And again, these clips are very hard to come by, so try not to lose them. Righto, so now it covers on, we can start putting the accessories on. Okay, so reinstall this pulley here and the drive studs. Put the belts back on. We put new belts on, the other ones were looking a little bit crusty. When we bent them backwards we could see some fatigue cracking. So there you go, there's our second belt lined up onto the alternator there and the water pump, and of course a harmonic balancer down the bottom. And we won't tension that up until after we've clamped in the fan, which we'll do now. So we've dropped the shroud and the fan in, the thermo fan in as one unit, and now I'm just going around putting all the nuts on. And I'll just nip them up, and I'll start just like you're doing up a wheel or a cylinder head. I'll do them diagonally. I won't be able to tighten them up all the way, of course, because there's no tension on the belt. Alright, then we'll just nip up the last two, and that'll be enough for us to set the tension on the fan belt. Okay, so we're just going to put a bit of tension on there now. And number 4 is here. That's done. And now we can lock up the tension. And that's done there now. Lock up the tension on the belts, and the belts have a fair bit of tension there. If the belts are squealing, well, they need a little bit more tension. Alright, so that's done. Now we need to mount the aircon compressor and run the belt for the aircon compressor. Okay, and finally we'll bolt up the air conditioning compressor. I've done the other 3 bolts, and we'll just put a bit of tension on this one. Okay, now we need the aircon compressor tensioning wheel. We'll bolt that in now. And I think the top one's a 14, so I'll just grab that out. Is it a 14? 12? Is that the right size?
Should be.
That's right, I'm going to edit it off. Backwards, I need to go backwards. That's probably enough. I'll check the tension off the side of the belt on the right hand side there. Might need a little bit more. Yep, that feels like good tension. Now I'll just lock it up with that nut there. You just keep spinning them clockwise till it's nice and taut. Right, as I say, the proof's in the pudding. So, can you turn it on please, Kayla? Well, there we go, it runs. Turn them off please. Now, I'd like to say to Elijah, what do we say, mate?
Leave a like, subscribe, and if you like it, thumbs up. If you didn't like it, double thumbs down.
Thanks guys, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks Elijah for your help today.
Don't do that, I'm filming.